Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Perspective. We'll be talking about the Pakistan and Saudi relations and of course Prime Minister's recent visit, the ramifications of this visit, what it means for our region, for our renewed relationship with Saudi Arabia, in the sense that of course we've seen many challenges as far as our relationship is concerned, but both countries have stood by each other in all times of crisis and all times of need. We'll be talking about what this means for us in terms of our political, the vision of politics as far as Pakistan is concerned within the region. We'll be talking about that. We'll also be talking about the economic effects, if any, of this visit, the way that it is timed, the way that it has been structured, the Prime Minister's visit with, of course, the Crown Prince, all of that today on Perspective. I have with me Yasir Janjua, who's a security analyst. Thank you for joining us today. We're also joined by Dr. Ijaz Akram, Professor of Religion and World Politics. Thank you for joining us today. And Umar Karim, who's a research fellow at the Royal United Services Institute, RUSI, London. Thank you for joining us today. Yasir Sahab, let's start off with you. How do you see this visit of the Prime Minister, particularly the way that it's been timed? Of course, it's Ramzan, and of course, he'll be there also on the 27th of Ramzan. How do you see it?
Thank you for inviting me here today. This, excuse me. This visit has been in the planning, in the works for quite a few weeks, if not months. And it's very important to see it in the perspective that the Army Chief is also there in Saudi Arabia. Pakistan-Saudi relations can never be undermined, although there are nosedives sometimes, ups and downs in the relations. However, we realize and the Saudis realize that we are very important for each other. Yes, we do look upon Saudi Arabia sometimes for our economic needs, like for example oil and other things, deferred payments for oil. But at the same time, Saudi Arabia also understands that Pakistan holds a very important position in the Islamic world and in the regional geopolitics, especially our next door neighbor Iran and Saudi-Iran relations. So sometimes Pakistan has to take a mediatory role. So, however, having said that, last few months have been very, very significant. Maybe probably from last September onwards, when UAE started their diplomatic relations or so-called with Israel, and then it was followed by Bahrain. However, in the recent few months we have seen that the blockade of Qatar has been lifted. So there's a change coming in the region as well. There was a lot of pressure, understandably, on Pakistan vis-a-vis Israel, but Pakistan government took a very principled stand that we will not recognize as Israel until the Palestinian issue is solved. However, in the recent weeks, what has happened in Pakistan, and Pakistan has understandably become isolated in the entire world, especially in the European Union, because of these TLP protests. You can see that the resolution passed in the European Union says Pakistan is the only country where this happened. And this was not government sponsored. You have to understand that the government was not behind it. It was the people of Pakistan, but the Europeans were saying, why didn't it happen in Saudi Arabia and why didn't it happen elsewhere? So I think the Prime Minister's visit is significant, that we want to raise Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is very, very, very close to our hearts. Every Pakistani can give his life for him. However, Pakistan wants the forum of OIC to raise this very important question. And I think Saudi Arabia takes a leadership role in that, and Pakistan wants to convince Saudi Arabia on this particular issue, that Pakistan should not be left alone to fight this war, and Saudi Arabia and the rest of the OIC countries should join Pakistan in raising the voice.
Right.
That's about the regional politics.
Let me come back to you, Yasir. I'm going to go to Dr. Ijaz. Ijaz, do you agree? I mean, I hope you've been following what Yasir is saying. Of course, it's important vis-a-vis the TLC protests also, and how we want at this time Saudi Arabia to play their part in letting the world know that we're not isolated, it's not only Pakistan. How do you see that? Dr. Saab, can you hear me? I think there's a problem with audio. Yasir, please continue.
Right, what I was saying was...
You said moving that aside.
now come comes to economics, we saw in the last few months that there was pressure on Pakistan to return the money that Saudi Arabia, and we did that. I think we returned $1 billion.
Right.
So because Pakistan would not want to be dictated its foreign policy by somebody, and Prime Minister Imran Khan and his government has been categorically saying this. Yes, we want to have very friendly relations with Saudi Arabia. Yes, we do hold Saudis in very high esteem because they are the custodians of the two holy places of Islam. However, our foreign policy will not be dictated by outside. And just because we need money, because we are in some very difficult situation, we will not change our foreign policy. We have seen in the past that there has not been enough support on Kashmir issue from the key allies or the key Muslim countries that we wanted to, except for Turkey and Malaysia, for example. And there was an issue that when Malaysia was holding a conference in Kuala Lumpur, Pakistan did not attend it, and there was an impression that Pakistan was coerced by Saudis not to attend it, although eventually Pakistan did attend another one. So
you think that it's been very, we categorically have managed to explain to the Saudis and also to the world that we have our own independent view as far as our policy, our own foreign policy around the world vis-a-vis any other countries.
I was only reading today, somebody was trying, obviously the print and electronic media now has become so open. People say all sorts of things. They say, well, Prime Minister Imran Khan is going to be put back in his box. Saudis have called him over to tell him, you take our terms because you take money from us. I don't think Imran Khan is the man who takes dictations from anybody. He's been saying that on the domestic level as well and on the international front as well. He's very clear in his thoughts that he is not going to take any dictation from anybody. So,
and that is, of course, he's established that with regard to the stand that we've taken.
Yes,
particularly.
And you will see in the days to come when he comes back from Saudi Arabia, you will see that he is not going to give any concessions on issues, for example, the issue of Israel. As a matter of fact, more importantly, I am not part of his core team, but I think he would go and raise the issue of TLP or Islamization or radicalization, that Pakistan is standing alone by itself trying to defend Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and there's nobody else there. But we're not asking Saudis to come out on the street and protest. We did not like this happening in Pakistan either.
Right.
But what we want is, from the platform of OIC, this voice should be raised, and European Union should not single out Pakistan for this. The entire Muslim world should stand there for it. And I think from that perspective, this visit is very, very important, because that European Union resolution has happened just last few days. And Imran Khan's visit now to Saudi Arabia will underscore the need for correcting this mistake that the Europeans are making by singling out Pakistan, apart from other things.
Ji, Dr. Ijaz, I hope you can hear me now.
Yes, I can hear you fine.
Dr. Ijaz, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you fine.
Ji, I hope that you have been following our discussion so far with Yasir Saab, and do you agree as far as the issue of raising the issue as far as what happened with TLP in Pakistan and asking the Saudis to actually, at least have our backs as far as that issue is concerned? Of course, it's very close to every Muslim's heart. Do you agree?
Yes, let me build up on that. Whereas it is true that there have been transformations between the Saudi-Pakistani relations recently. You have to see that it's the relationship of Saudi Arabia not only went sour with Pakistan, it went sour with Turkey, it was already bad with Iran, it went sour with Qatar, and a host of other countries, including Russia and to a lesser extent China. So what is happening now, that the Pakistani civil and military leadership does not normally take any major foreign policy decisions without consulting China, which is their closest partner, and I think that is a wise thing to do. So what is happening is that the Russians and the Chinese have decided to minimize the US involvement and the level of Israeli control in the Gulf politics. Now, so the Pakistanis have gone to recalibrate our defense relationship, our political relationships, and most of all, there are some few things in Saudi Arabia that are highly troublesome. And one of those things is their version of Islam, which has been used supposedly by many terrorist and extremist groups, which is a cause of concern for the world of Islam. So I think that although I don't think that this thing will come up in this meeting, it ought to come up later meetings. And the second thing is that since the Americans and the Israelis are aware that we had NDS located within our lab very comfortably, and UAE, US, Israel, and India, and now there is a movement from within the Saudi Arabian state to move back to its old relationships, because they don't think that it's going to be safe in the long run for Saudi Arabia to put all its eggs in one basket. That's also a smart thing to do, but I think that this set of proposals that have gone from our civil and military leadership to the Saudis now will gradually come out. I mean, the full range of agenda we may never know until some time. But what will happen is that there will be a lot of backlash and a lot of pressure on MBS to swing back to its default position that was given to it around the turn of the year. So I'm looking that this may be an aftermath of what is going on. As to what is going on the surface, it's about trade and energy and all those fuzzy good things. But in reality, it is a recalibration of relationship at a systemic level, where there are compulsions of Zionist geopolitics that clash with what China has in mind and what Russia has in mind. So there is a whole host of new relationships being calibrated right now.
Right. Omar Saab, your take on this? I'm sorry.
All right,
I can hear you now.
I think that Pakistan-Saudi relationship, it was in a pretty bad patch in the last year, and I think this is the first meeting right now between the Saudi Crown Prince and Pakistan Army Chief. The last time Pakistan Army Chief went to Saudi Arabia, there was no meeting between the Pakistan Army Chief and the Saudi Crown Prince. And the Pakistani Prime Minister, he has not met the Saudi Crown Prince for more than a year. They didn't even have any telephone contact either. So that pretty much showed how bad was the situation and how different were the strategic imperative or strategic interests of both sides. It seems that after the departure of President Trump from the White House and the arrival of Biden administration, there has been some recalibration on the Saudi side as well as on the Pakistani side. Saudi Arabia is reorienting its relationship within its neighborhood. It has ended the split with Qatar. It's also it has started secret talks with Iran, and next week the Turkish foreign minister will also be in Riyadh. From a Pakistani perspective, it's all very positive. I mean, Pakistan didn't have a real problem with Saudi Arabia in itself. The problems which developed between the two nations, they were because of their respective foreign policy stance on different matters. So now those issues seem to be resolving. It's a good opportunity for both sides to come close again, to engage with each other again, but also with a realistic mindset as well, because we have seen that both Pakistan and Saudi Arabia became very close when the Saudi Crown Prince visited Pakistan. But then both sides exactly didn't see on many issues eye to eye, and that.
But like Omar Saab, if he's been talking about the fact how we took the government at this time, Imran Khan's government, we took a stand, and I think we've established that to the Saudis. Wouldn't you agree? Because it seems that at least Pakistan has managed to put that down, that they will not be dictated as far as our foreign policy is concerned with regard to any other country.
I think in the modern day international relations atmosphere, it's already very difficult for any middle level power to dictate any other middle level power. I don't think so. This phenomenon of dictation is as such very prominent. But the problem is Pakistan has lost its strategic leverage with Saudi Arabia. I mean, it has gained some strategic leverage in other countries and elsewhere as well. So it's not a lose or gain in a way. But the problem is Pakistan is dependent upon the remittances which we receive from Saudi Arabia, from our expatriate workers. while traditionally we offset this leverage of Saudis through by providing security services or security cooperation. That avenue seems to be eroding very heavily, and you have seen that last year the Indian Army Chief, he visited Saudi Arabia for the first time, and that showed that how things have changed within Saudi Arabia. There has also been increased Saudi cooperation with Egyptian military, as well as with, of course, the American element has always been there. But it seems that Pakistan's very, very important and very significant strategic presence within Saudi Arabia is not as much important anymore as it used to be, because otherwise how can we be discussing or debating issues of dictation or issues of one side pressuring another and the other side taking a stand? It means that we have lost some ground, that now we are debating this, or if the Saudis are pressurizing us. So it's always good
let me
to
come back
keep
to you on
realities.
that. I'm going to go to Umar. Umar, do you agree that we've lost our strategic leverage?
I beg to disagree with Umar that we've lost the leverage with Saudi Arabia. I'm trying to make a point again here. Saudis gave us $3 billion and they thought Pakistan is in a crunch situation. We'll ask the money back or ask them to listen to our terms.
Right.
We went back to them, here's your money. At least we gave part of it, we gave away $1 billion. Whether it came from China or elsewhere, that's not an issue. We gave them the money, but we told them we're not going to listen to you.
Right.
Now we have to look at things not in isolation. See the bigger picture, the bigger maze. A few weeks ago, the Russian foreign minister was here. Pakistan and Russia relations are going on a next level. We missed the boat in 1951 when Russia invited us and we didn't go there.
Right.
Now we are going on that level that has never been seen before. Mark my words, the reliance on Saudi oil, what we thought and the world thought, with due respect to my Saudi brothers, that the world thought that Pakistan will die without the Saudi oil. If the Russians come in, and they are coming in, they are coming in big time. So we will have Russian oil at much, much, much cheaper prices, at deferred payments and all those things. So our reliance on Saudi Arabia, we don't need to be reliant on Saudi Arabia anymore. It's actually Saudis who need us for their protection. And every time there's a threat to them, they can't trust anybody but the Pakistani army. And that's why the army chief goes and meets the Saudi crown prince. He's right, yes, last time he did not meet or the Saudi crown, but that's a different story. There's a different, I don't want to discuss that in this program today. There is a reason for that. However, having said that, you have to understand, we have to understand, only recently China has signed a $400 billion contract with Iran, and they are now becoming part of the CPEC or BRI. Saudi is worried about it. UAE is worried about it, because Jebel Ali port is going to lose its importance the moment Gwadar becomes effective. So there is regional economics as well. Saudi Arabia wants to remain relevant. It does not want to push Pakistan to a point where Pakistan completely goes into another block. And that is why, who else would be invited in the most holy month of Ramadan? They've invited Mr. Imran Khan and the army chief to come and visit during the last 10 days of Ramadan, because they want to reduce those tensions that are built up, because they understand and they realize. And most importantly, as probably Dr. was saying as well, with the Biden administration coming in, MBS, His Highness, His Excellency Mohammed bin Salman, is no longer that strong man as he was with Jared Kushner there in White House and Donald Trump there in White House. Now things have changed. So Americans are also dictating their policy in different terms. So that's why Saudi Arabia is also doing the realignment, and that's why Pakistan at this time can assert its position. And that position is that we will not be dictated our foreign policy by somebody from outside. We have not done that in the past many, many decades, but this is the time and this is the government which is effectively doing this, and we should all stand by it. And that is why you see armed forces and the government both on the same page in terms of our strategic objectives. Recognition of Israel is a complete no-go until obviously Palestinian issue is solved. However, right now we are in a different quagmire.
What about Iran? How do you see the situation with that?
There's an interesting piece I was reading today. Look, I was reading that in Iran, probably the Jewish the largest Jewish community outside Israel is actually in Iran.
Okay.
Iran was the only country which was a recipient of then the F-14s, which were the top aircraft in the world. Iran was the only recipient of them during the Iran-Iraq war. By then, Americans did not even give them to Israelis, and they gave them to Iran. So there is a lot of politics, and that is beyond the scope of this program, so I'm not going to go deep into that. Why is Israel building all the Shia states around Israel? Why are the Sunni states not being strengthened around Israel? Because it's all about selling their weapons, you know. The Iran-Saudi rivalry is good for Israeli weapon industry and the American weapon industry.
But how do we figure in this relationship?
Now, the thing is, when you say how do we figure in this? See, Iran and Pakistan are neighbors, and we have a lot of commonalities. Yes, we have a lot of differences as well. But everybody knows that if there is going to be some warming up of relations between Saudi Arabia and Iran, Pakistan can play its role. I was living in the US, and I can tell you from my personal experience in Washington DC, there was no Iranian consulate or embassy, so everything was done from the Pakistani embassy. All the visas for Irani visas were issued from the Pakistani embassy. So Pakistan has always played that bridge role for Iran, and that can still be done. And at one point in the last few years, Pakistan tried that as well. Obviously, it was not well reciprocated. However, Saudi Arabia realizes, more importantly, and lastly, before you want to go on to your other speakers, Saudi Arabia also realizes that Pakistan has taken a very pivotal role in the CPEC scenario, and Pakistan has gone very close to China. And the result has been, soon after the Saudis started pressurizing Pakistan over oil, China reduced its imports of oil from Saudi Arabia. It was a signal to Saudi Arabia that you can't do this because CPEC is very important to China, and the success of CPEC is very important to China. So, and Saudi Arabia realizes that we can't just completely ignore China, and China and Pakistan are two things which are now moving together, two countries moving together. So I think this visit is going to bring some very positive outcomes.
Let's hope so. Dr. Ijaz, do you agree? You think that this is going to be a positive, it will play its positive role as far as Pakistan and Saudi relationship is concerned? Let's talk more about Iran. I hope you've been following what Umar Saab is saying. Do you think that this will change things for us in terms of our own relationship, putting a stamp on our own autonomy as far as Saudi Arabia is concerned?
Yes, absolutely. I agree with what Umar Saab said, and and I will add to that Pakistan has not lost an inch as far as our strategic value, our leverage, and so forth vis-a-vis Saudi Arabia. As a matter of fact, we are gained. We are there with a high moral ground, and we are backed by some forces. So Pakistan is not sitting at the negotiating table on the receiving end as it used to be. Rather, this time around, we've gone to not talk down to them. They still are brothers. I mean, I agree. But we have gone to lay down the fundamental things that the regional powers and the smaller powers in the region have a consensus upon. All right? Now, that's as a departure point. I would also say that's because Saudi Arabia has no moral legitimacy. It has no spiritual legitimacy in the Muslim world anymore. Why? Because it stays quiet on quintessential issues of Palestine. It stays quiet on Kashmir. It stays quiet on so many different other very important issues that the Muslim world is confronting. So what type of custodians of the two holy mosques are they if it's a country that has come about in the name of a family? Not even the entire country. It's the only country that has come about in the name of a family. And so this is not enough legitimacy for a country to exist, let alone to contest that they are the moral and the intellectual and the spiritual leaders of the Muslim world. It is probably intellectually one of the most impoverished parts of the Muslim world that believe in very primitive and wrong understandings of Islam. Now, as far as Iran is concerned, Iran is intellectually, spiritually a much more vibrant place. And Turkey is the same, and Pakistan as well. Unfortunately, Pakistan has had to go through several years of difficult situation on our borders in Afghanistan and India. But nonetheless, I would say that that Pakistan is now going to jump off the bandwagon of the United States of America into a new system of alliances, which is a lot more natural, geographically contiguous, and reflects the aspirations of the people of our country. With the Saudi Arabians, we only had a good time as long as they were underwritten by the United States of America, and we were written by the United States. We were underwritten by the United States of America. That formed the basis of our good relationships, and therefore we had military contact. Now, when Pakistan is no longer sitting on the sinking Titanic of the United States of America, that means that Saudis are now caught between a rock and a hard place. The Chinese are talking tough to them, the Russians are talking down to them, and the Pakistanis have actually gone to negotiate. That are you going to stay put on the sinking Titanic, or are you going to jump our way and start giving us oil in yuan instead of dollars, and do a lot of those things that the new world, not the new world order as in Henry Kissinger, but the multipolar new order that is brewing, which Pakistan is a part of. And so I think these are the things that will put enormous amount of strain on the royal family, especially on MBS, and I don't think he's going to go through with this. I think that he will be bludgeoned by the forces that back him, because that country is littered with the U.S. bases, and even if Pakistan is successful in wooing them onto our side, which is to the new system of alliance, that'd be great. In case, but I suspect that the amount of infiltration and inroads that the old powers have within the Saudi Arabian system, it'll be a mighty hard thing to do. But we hope that be done.
Right. Umar Saab, do you agree? Dr. Umar Saab, you were following Dr. Ijaz. Do you think that it's going to be as difficult for the Saudis as both Yasir Saab and Umar Karim seem to believe?
I think we need to understand the Saudi system more closely and more deeply, and also we need to deconstruct the nature of Pakistan-Saudi Arabia relationship. Just forget all other sides. Just focus on what is the kind of relationship between Pakistan and Saudi Arabia. We have around about 2 million of a diaspora community, and whenever this relationship goes through a bad patch, those people are the ones who are directly affected. The recent statements of the Pakistani Prime Minister regarding diplomatic staff in Riyadh and their incompetence and etc. One reason is also that there have been more complaints and there have been more problems because the country-to-country relationship hasn't been very good. And it's not about Pakistan and Saudi Arabia. Whichever two countries have a problematic or constrained relationship, they have similar issues. The citizens have similar issues. So we need to think of the larger picture rather than, whatever is our geopolitical understanding. And also, on the other hand, the Chinese and the Russians, they are very actively engaging with the Saudis. The Chinese have actually been helping the Saudis building and they have been working alongside Saudis in a way in ventures which can eventually move towards the construction of a possible nuclear bomb, and this has raised a lot of eyebrows within the United States. So I don't know where has this notion come from that the Chinese and the Russians, they are completely against the Saudis and they are in a different camp, and the Saudis. I mean, this whole notion of blocks is, I'm sorry to say, is a very Pakistan notion which is created in Pakistan. Outside Pakistan, there are no such blocks. Like the Chinese are working with the Saudis, the Chinese are working with the Iranians, the Chinese are working with the Israelis. I mean, the Chinese are right now, they are operating the Haifa. So, international powers, they are not backing anyone right now. Of course, the U.S. policy under Trump was much more aggressive towards Iran. Now they are balancing their own policy to some extent. Saudi Arabia, of course, when it had the full backing of President Trump, it had a very different outlook, and it went into this frenzy of creating problems with across its neighborhood. Now it's recalibrating that whole thing. But for us, we need to understand what can we give to Saudi Arabia and what are we taking from them. We are taking the money which is being sent, by which our government touts each and every month that our expatriates are sending this money. So we need to provide our expatriates with some kind of political leverage and protection. And there were issues, I mean, we cannot deny it. Whoever was to blame, I think this is a complicated issue in itself. But of course, our diplomatic mission could have done better. Right now, I was reading the interview of the current ambassador, and he was saying that the new initiatives taken by Saudi Arabia are a Saudi peace spring. I mean, this is now sort of the language which will really be received positively by Saudi Arabia. Also, I understand that within Pakistan, we have stopped, at least within our decision-making quarters, we are not any longer talking about these blocks or geostrategic realignment, because ultimately, our possible partners, like let's say Iran or Turkey, they don't have those big pockets with which these Gulf countries have. So that's why we were forced to ask the UAE to please roll down the $2 billion of loan which we were supposed to pay in the last month. And now possibly with Saudi Arabia as well, we will ask them again to roll down that $1 billion which we are left with for some time more. I mean, let's be honest, our economic situation is not very good, and nobody else is to blame for it. We are ourselves. We should be responsible for that. So the thing is we need to be. We should. Okay, we are not accepting dictation. If we were told to accept Israel, I mean, this is a very different debate. We didn't do it. Okay, that's fine. We need to keep our interests in line, but we also need to not embark upon policies or strategies or narratives that then create problems. I mean, Pakistan issued a statement, rightly so, that we are not receiving much needed support from Saudi Arabia and UAE, the issue of Kashmir. But what happened afterwards? I can say that from our foreign office to our political leadership, not only political leadership in the government, but in the opposition, even police leadership of Islamabad, everyone visited the Saudi High Commission. Everyone tried and made up effort to resolve the issue, to create some semblance of normality, to make things up with the Saudi. Why should we do it to start with? I think if we know that there is not enough support for them, then the way their diplomacy works, you talk this in private and you give you raise your concern, and then you hear their point of view.
Right, I'm going to Umar Saab, do you agree? You think that, I think he raises an interesting point as far as blocks is concerned.
Yasser,
Yasser Saab.
First and foremost, we're not here on a debate to fight with each other. But
no, but your opinion on...
Yes, my opinion. First of all, Mr. Umar Karim is saying, and we are not talking about we moving out of the Saudi bloc completely. Our friendship, our relationship, our ties with Saudi Arabia will remain the same. But now we have realigned our priorities. And as far as Saudi relations with other countries in the region and oil, I'll just give you one example. A few months ago, Saudi Arabia wanted to reduce the production of oil, to raise the oil prices. Russia simply refused it. They did not budge an inch. They said, sorry, we're not going to do it. They continued producing at the levels they wanted. Saudi could not dictate to them. And this is the case with so many other countries. China, as I told you, China said, well, we'll stop or reduce the imports of oil from Saudi Arabia. So Saudi Arabia could not any longer, especially after the Biden administration, Saudi Arabia or Saudi Arabian administration is not in the driving seat the way they used to be. As far as Pakistan is concerned, we are not saying that we are just getting out of the Saudi bloc or the friendship with Saudi, but we will want to retain this dignity that we want to. See, only yesterday our finance minister was saying that we will not let IMF dictate.
Right, let me interrupt you there. Don't you think he raises a fair point when he says that it's all about everyone's interests whether it's China, whether it's Russia, whether it's Pakistan also. It's not so much about blocks anymore. It's more about, case, let's take it like that, case to case basis, whatever country.
So that's how we are doing it. We are following our interests. We have been...
Which is fair enough. I mean, for other countries...
I'm sorry, I'm going to use the word one of the panelists used, maybe people don't like it. We've been sitting in the US lab for the last 70 odd years. Now we realize, no, we were in the wrong place probably. We had to have relations with everybody.
Right.
We shouldn't have left Russia out. Similarly, we have been too reliant on Saudi Arabia. And I must say, I beg to disagree. Pakistan's foreign policy is not dictated by the remittances from the expats that go out of Pakistan and saying, yes, that's a big number of money that comes into Pakistan and our economy does rely, but our foreign policy will not be dictated by the remittances.
Right.
Our foreign policy objectives will be dictated by our core fundamentals. And one of the core fundamentals is our own. Kashmir issue is very fundamental. So if some country is not supporting us on the Kashmir issue, or we are being singled out in European Union, we just because we are getting remittances, we are not going to go and sit down in front of them and say, do whatever you like, give us the money.
Do you see the Saudis changing their stance vis-a-vis Kashmir, or perhaps, supporting us more? Because we have seen them...
We'll be living in fool's paradise if we expect Saudis to do something for us. If they did something for us, Kashmir issue would have been solved long time ago. Saudis will not come to your help. Maybe China in one way or the other is doing what they are doing. Trying to pressurize India from another angle whereby Indians are now feeling the heat.
Because of their own interest.
Saudis will not. Saudis, because India is a big economy, they see a lot of oil going there, so why would they want to antagonize Indians? So we'll be living in fool's paradise if we think, oh, because we are Muslims, Saudi Arabia will come and start with us. That is not going to happen in a million years. This is what I think. However, having said that, we are not going to close our relationships with Saudi Arabia. We are going to keep it on parity, on equality basis, not to be dictated. And remittances or other things, they are otherwise, Saudis have done things that they had to do in the last many years, so they have not changed them. The question is, it's not about remittances.
But you think that today they are perhaps seeing us in a new light. They are seeing us as partners.
I think they are realizing the importance of Pakistan and especially the importance China and Russia are giving to Pakistan. And Saudis have woken up to the reality, look, Pakistan was a friend or an ally, and now Chinese and Russians are getting on board with him. Iran is coming closer. So why should we let Pakistan slip away into somebody else's hands? And just let me give you one thing. The plan China has is from Gwadar, an undersea tunnel into Muscat or into Oman, and that will connect it eventually through Yemen and from under the Red Sea into Africa. They're not talking about Saudi Arabia or UAE. They're connecting from Pakistan to, this is a plan which is going to unfold maybe in the next 20 years, 30 years. But this is what China wants to do. It wants to reach Africa, not through Saudi Arabia. It was easier for them to go through Saudi Arabia because Yemen, for at least, it's a trouble spot, but they still want to go through Yemen. They have not chosen Saudi Arabia. This is in the planning. I have heard from very, very reliable sources on the authority that they speak that this is in the planning. So why? Now Saudis have realized, and this is just one thing, this might not be, but this is a big initiative that Chinese are taking because they want to reach African soil through Pakistan, through Oman and through Yemen. Pakistan will gain a lot. Gwadar will gain a lot. Pakistan will gain a lot. Saudis now realize that the extremism of Trump administration and the backing Mohammed bin Salman was getting is no longer there. And they should realize that. They have now seen that Pakistan will not be dictated just because Pakistan owes them money, they will dictate their terms to them. And we have demonstrated that if you think you want your money back, we'll give you your money back, but we'll not
compromise on our own autonomy, our own
This is what my point is. And remittances, unfortunately, will not dictate how we drive our foreign policy.
Right. Ji, Umar Saab, your comments, unfortunately, were very close to time. Ji. Umar Saab, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. So I'll just say that I mean at the start of when possibly things started getting bad, we were told by Saudi Arabia and UAE that we cannot back you that much on the Kashmir issue. Okay, I mean fair enough. We have a point of divergence over the issue. But they then said that, why don't you sit down with India and talk? We said no, this is not going to happen. We have a very bad patch with both of the countries. That money which they gave us, okay, they are good enough. This money had to be returned in any case. But what we did at the end of the day, we did the same. The Marathi diplomats, now they are saying that Pakistan and India had been holding back channel talks. So why didn't we do it from the very start, or at least why do we damaged our ties with the Gulf nations and created problems? And I'm not saying we compromised on our foreign policy, but the problem is our citizens also have a value in this. And our people in the Gulf, they owe us a lot, as we and other Pakistanis do. So when there was a relatively better option available for Pakistan, why did we opt for this notion of, you can say, trying to create problems which were very unwarranted?
Right. To Dr. Ijaz, your quick comments before we close. Unfortunately, we're out of time.
Yes. I think that, there is a certain liberal point of view that is prevalent in certain policy circles in Pakistan, which is unfortunately not based on reality. And the reason for that is that they still see the world as that national interest. Because of national interest, there are no blocks and all of those things. Well, if you look at the sharpness of bad relationship between Russia and the United States, between China and the United States, between Turkey lately in the United States, Iran and the United States, and Pakistan also is weaning off of that. You really have to put your understanding on a very outdated and a shallow view of geopolitics to say that the emergent institutions and the attendant blocks are not in the phase of formation. I think that information is a little bit late. So I would say that we have to keep an eye on that, and Pakistan has to select the group of nations to which it is going to have an new institutional arrangement with very, very carefully, and which means AIIB, which means SCO, because nobody can deny that the Western civilization and their state systems in general are on a state of impending decline. And so there was a time when Pakistan saw its interest in the United States. Now we don't see its interest in the United States. And if Saudi Arabia is going to be underwritten by the same big bosses, then I think I'm sorry to say that we have to have full autonomy of our foreign policy. We want to make our new foreign policy on Afghanistan.
Right. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for joining us. Yasir Janjua Saab, thank you for being with us. Umar Kareem Saab, thank you for joining us. Dr. Ijaz Akram, thank you for being with us. A very fruitful, interesting discussion today. Whether there are blocks or no blocks, the point remains that as far as Pakistan and Saudi Arabia is concerned, we remain important geostrategic partners, and of course a stable relationship with Pakistan and Saudi Arabia is expected to continue. As far as Saudi Arabia and Pakistan is concerned, of course, one expects that as a Muslim neighbor they will do more, not only for Pakistan but for Islam as a whole, and support Pakistan in issues like Kashmir, in issues we've had recently over the TLP protests. Let's hope that can happen. Let's hope that we can have a better relationship and that Saudi Arabia will extend itself more. Thank you so much for joining us today on Perspective.